Ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast, put your hands together for Steven Risotto!
What is going on, everybody, and welcome. This is episode number 89 of RizzoCast. I'm Steven Risotto, and today we are joined by another special guest. It is Michael McKenry. He played in parts of 7 big league seasons as a catcher with the Rockies, Pirates, and St. Louis Cardinals. He's now an analyst covering the Pirates with AT&T Sportsnet. Michael, thank you for joining me, and welcome to the show.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Thanks for reaching out, and I'm looking forward to talking a little baseball.
Yeah, no, for sure. And when I was doing my research on who I wanted to have on, and it's usually not a huge process. I always just go down the timeline and I go, oh, this person would be good. Your nickname is Fort. So like, I have to hear more about that. That seems like the coolest nickname. So how did the nickname Fort kind of come about? And you've kind of embraced it, it seems.
Yeah. So you were telling me, before we got on, that you're into broadcasting. You did some games this year. Well, the broadcasters, when I came to Pittsburgh, the last being McKenry and me being a 5'9", kind of little bowling ball, they were like, man, that guy kind of looks like a Fort. And then it turned into, I love to block. I had a huge passion to keep the ball in front of me as a catcher. It was an old school mentality. So, Bob Walk and Greg Brown, they'll both claim that they gave me the nickname, but they started calling me the Fort. And then there was an infamous call. I hit a home run to take the lead in the game. And Greg Brown has some of the best calls you'll ever hear. So he made it kind of even bigger. And when I came back, it was still there. It was still very much like who they knew me by when it came to my baseball personality. They're like, that's the Fort. That's McKenry. That's the Fort. No Michael. I don't even think I even get called Michael most of the time, especially in Pittsburgh. But the crazy part for me is when you think of a nickname, a lot of times it's from some silly story or whatever. It really was cool because that one followed me everywhere, no matter where I went. I mean, I left in 13 and played 4 more seasons, and the Fort followed me, from Pittsburgh from 13 all the way on. It's 2021. I'm doing a lot of different things, and still most of the time when people come up to me, they give me that look and they're like, are you the Fort? I'm like, yeah. It's a humbling thing. I'm very lucky to have a good nickname. Could have been something really strange. Luckily it's not.
Yeah. Hey, clear the deck, cannonball coming. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
The Fort. No, that's a pretty badass nickname. And I guess to kind of jump in here to what's happening now in baseball, as a former player, and you mentioned before we got on here, a former union rep a few times, kind of watching this situation unfold between Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association. We're in week 2 now of this lockout. What do you hope if you were to have any desires and any hopes for the turnout and what happens in these negotiations for the new CBA? What would they be?
Patience for the fans. I'm praying that they have a soft heart for, some really unfortunate circumstances of the last couple of years with the COVID and with all the kind of bantering back and forth they had to do in 2020. And it seemed like they were never going to put things together. And, baseball's always been that sport that found a way to get on the field. You think about during the war times, during depression, no matter what, there was baseball. You think about Field of Dreams, Ray, there's baseball. It's the one, and that's a really great quote, but that moment was the first time it was really just stopped. It wasn't there. Think about the 1918 flu, they were out there playing. I mean, and I think that put up a lot of red flags when they couldn't get it going. We all understood this was an unprecedented time. I think there was a lot of patience and a lot of grace from the fans and from the players and the ownership. But then when they started leaking different things and it showed more and more about money and money and money. And I know when people are not able to work and, some misfortunate things are happening, people in families are sick or passing away, they don't want to hear about, big world problems. They just don't want to hear that. So I think it was set up in a very tough way, but I think that was a kind of forecast of what was to come. And it's really terrifying to me because I hope that they don't lose sight of what started it all, right? To have a more balanced affair where, almost 50-50 style, right? The owners and the players 50-50. It's still the owners get a little bit more than the players, but they own the team, right? What other business would give their employees all the money comparative? So you have to kind of balance out and understand that at the end of the day, it is a business. They're treating it like a business, and the players are actually a business. They're their own brand. They're trying to, grow in their own personalities or whatnot. And Major League Baseball wants to enhance that. So there's a lot of moving pieces. What I hope is we start spring training on time. That's my only hope, but I'm not holding my breath. I do like that the ownership, I'm not necessarily saying I like how Manfred goes about much of anything, but I do like how they said, we're going to stop the transactions and try to figure this out before we get to spring training, instead of doing what they did last time and letting all the people sign and then shutting it down right at spring training. So all the guys that, are just on the 40-man, they can figure some things out, get that moving piece to, go train here, go do this, because they're living in Florida and they can't go to the spring training site.
Yeah. And the interesting part about it is I've seen guys tweet about how, they're rehabbing from something and they can't even talk to the team doctors or strength coaches. And it's really interesting. Were you around during, you were around, but how old were you when, 1994? Do you remember much of any of that?
I don't. I think I was really confused because I think I was 9, and I just love the game, right? Like if I could sit still long enough, I'd watch it, but like I'd be running around while the game's going on, no matter who's on. Ooh, I'm going to be Ron Gant today. I'm going to be David Justice today. It didn't matter. I was imitating them while they were on TV, but they weren't there. So it was a very confusing time for me. It's, when I was getting into baseball cards and all those things. So I was becoming a fan.
And, I feel like not a lot of people understand the role of a player rep. And you said that was kind of our union rep. And you said that you served as one a few times. So what is kind of the role to be a union rep? What are your duties? Do you have to attend all these meetings? What are some of the things that is required of you in that role?
You just have to stay up with what's going on. So Tony Clark and his entire staff at the MLBPA, they do an incredible job of pushing out information, especially when you are playing. And they let you know kind of, hey, here's where the talks are going. And they have reps regionally. Like you'll see the same guy in Colorado when you're at a homestand. He usually comes to 1 or 2 homestands a month, and he'll come and he'll find the reps and say, hey, what's going on? What's the buzz in the clubhouse? Is there some problems going on? Or is there anything that we could, maybe sit down and talk with? But honestly, it's kind of a well-oiled machine. I think the one tough thing is when we lost Mike Weiner, who was the top or the head. He was more like a business guru. So he didn't have any of the player side to it. So him and Tony Clark were like a two-headed monster. Now you have a player in Tony Clark, who's an amazing person and he does an amazing job, but he is a player and he's fighting for players. So he has a really tough balance because he's the head honcho now, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Mike Weiner was, that balance was, he could kind of put him in his place. Like, hey, we got to look at it this way, because Tony Clark will literally take a cannonball for the players. Like there's no doubt in my mind, this guy loves his job. He believes in what he's doing and he's going to fight for what he thinks is right. But sometimes, having a different perspective, like Mike Weiner, and God rest his soul, I wish he was still here. He was terrifying to the MLB ownership group. I mean, they were just terrified of him because he was able to talk above the owners because he could focus on that, knowing Tony nailed the players. So he was like, no, that's not true. You're lying. And he would just kind of talk him into circles. And he did that all the way through his cancer treatment and everything else. So I was a part of all that. I watched that kind of all happen. I watched Tony Clark take the reins. So I got to see it kind of grow into something different. And they're starting to try to do some things a little bit different, teaming up with NFLPA and doing some things that maybe could grow the status into a bigger, L Corp, or C Corp, excuse me, and see what happens. Cause that's the only way we are ever going to compete with the ownership group ever.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And, they're trying to pump out this CBA. They're trying to agree to a few things. And a lot of the stuff is with financials and service time and all that. But there might be some stuff that correlates to on the field changes. And this is so much fun to ask people this and to have these discussions. So I'm gonna ring off a few here. I want to get your take on shifting. And as a right-handed hitter, I guess shifting wasn't really, right-handed hitters, it was more recent. It evolved more recently. We would always have shifts on Ryan Howard and even far back as Ted Williams and
Right.
big left-handed hitters like that. Now everybody's getting the shift. So, you could throw that out the window. What is your thoughts on shifting? Like, should that be something discussed? I mean, do you think that there should be two guys on the right side only with, playing on the dirt, or should they have free reign? Because, I know the main argument is, well, Bill Belichick's allowed to deploy his defenders anywhere. What do you think should be done about the shift, if anything?
Well, if you're going into a competition of any kind, I don't think you put handcuffs on anybody. If they want to play 15 guys on the right side, you let them play 15 guys on the right side, right? You may have to pull those guys off the field because that's too many players on the field. But if they want to try to sneak that in, I think that's entertaining. I think seeing guys halfway out in right field when Joey Gallo's up, seeing 4 outfielders in the 3rd inning, right? And not seeing the guy bunt and take his hit is hilarious. But what's going to happen, just like it always has in this game, guys adapt. They start to do things, and they start to change. But at the end of the day, and I don't know if you ever talk to anybody about this, until they change the value of certain things, no matter what they do with the shifts and everything else, it won't matter. Like not having shifts, they think, oh, well, the productivity will go up. Well, or whatever their concept is. That was the one meeting I sat in. They said, yeah, we're trying to look for more offense, more stuff going on. Well, then reward the players and pay them for it. If that's what you want, moving a guy over, hey, that's the same as a sack bunt now in the pay status when you go to arbitration. You want to change the thoughts of, the teams and actual players, change the way the green comes into their pocketbook. That's it. That's what, like you just said a minute ago, that's what they're fighting over 99% of the time is, just little nooks and crannies where money is. And right now there's money coming in from all directions, but the fans aren't coming to the games. So it's growing and growing and growing, but the fans aren't coming. So that experience to actually be there where you really get a hold of, the players and understand who they are. And you kind of have that feel to become a reality, kind of like your Superman logo back there. Like they become Clark Kent instead of Superman, cause you've been seeing them on TV. So I think they're trying to figure that out, but at the end of the day, it's how you reward the players and how you reward the teams, because that arbitration thing is a nasty, nasty animal when you get to it.
Yeah, incentivize the guys that hit the ball to all fields.
Right.
That should be something that Major League Baseball should focus on there. And I know that catchers, as a former catcher yourself, tempo and pace of the game is huge. And I personally don't think it's a problem. I think it's more of a money-making thing. But, if there was a pitch clock in there and they did implement a pitch clock, and I've heard some things about it, how it's helping in the minor leagues and is shaving minutes off. But does baseball really need to, have time shaved off of it? Is it really in that dire of a situation?
So my thing is they're already at the game,
Yeah.
right? So if it's a 3-hour game, they're there for the entertainment. If it's a 4-hour game, they're there for the entertainment. So yeah, I think it's a kind of weird way to go about it. I think there's a bigger reason for it that, maybe the ownership group doesn't talk about, but there's a lot more that goes into that. If you go and look at some of the studies on guys in the minor leagues, you have to train a little bit different to understand that pitch clock, because you actually don't get your heart rate back down if you're training as a 101 guy, 102, like where you're kind of releasing all energy and you're really a 1/4 mile approach, and you need to be a 1/2 mile approach when you think about driving a car. And they're going to have to change some things. If they do that pitch clock, it's going to change everything, but there's always a workaround. When they implemented the whole batter's box thing, when I was there, there was a workaround, right? Ball comes back, like anywhere near you, you can get out and walk. Ball would be outside, you'd lean back and get out. And they couldn't say anything because, man, I just didn't feel comfortable in the box. I had to get out. You may get a warning and it kind of moves on. So, I think they're trying a lot of weird things that, in my opinion, I don't think will help. And when you're telling a guy to breathe through his nostrils and, wear his garter to make sure that he can slow his mind down, and then you want to speed him up, I don't know if that's the best way to go, right? So you have kind of this double-edged sword that is really not going to make any sense. And they'll obviously adapt and do whatever they have to do. But like you said, I do not think that's a problem. Take away the commercials, do more commercials in game, right? Do some things that can speed up the game for the people at home. Do the red zone like they do in the NFL. Go every time Ohtani and Trout hit, go straight there, split screen everywhere. Like whoever that feature person is, right? They should just do stuff that'd be more fun. I have some really cool ideas that we sat down one day with a guy in Pittsburgh, a local writer in Pittsburgh. We just kind of bantered back and forth, and they could do a lot of fun things, but they're so hyper focused on the, I guess, big, huge picture that they don't even really share, and they're not very transparent with us. So I don't know if they'll ever do it.
Yeah, hopefully your ideas come to fruition. And I laughed at the batter's box thing because I feel like that just died after like 3 months and they just stopped enforcing it. I don't know how it was on your guys' side of things, but as fans of the game and as spectators of the game, it just seemed like it just went away. And I guess it's really tough for umpires to enforce something. Maybe they don't necessarily, you don't necessarily have the attention of all the umpires, kind of like what they were doing with the walking off the mound and checking the glove. And I talked to one of the Giants relievers, Jay Jackson, about this. And I was like, what do you guys say during that situation when he has your glove and in your hat? And he was like, yeah, one time, one of the umpires told me, hey, I don't want to be doing this, but we have to do it. So
exactly.
That's kind of like
that's the last thing you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're enforcing your employees to do something that they don't want to do. And like, not a lot of guys got in trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of that is, like, Rob Manfred just threw something out in the ocean there. Like, there was no need for that right in the middle of the season. They could have done it and implemented it at the end of the season. And I know Tyler Glasnow said something about getting hurt, right? That there's a possibility of that. Well, the science backs him up, right? If you're gripping something harder, you're putting a lot more pressure on your arm and everything else. And he's a guy that needed to, stay loose, stay relaxed. So yeah, that sunscreen and rosin, that is a part of the game. It's been a part of the game for as long as we know, or water and rosin that is as sticky as anything else. It's amazing to me that they went in and guys got terrified. And yes, maybe some spin rates went down, but they also did, if you just saw the article, they also implemented balls differently this year. They used 2 different balls. So maybe that had something to do with it, right? Or maybe it was that guys actually got tired after 65, 70 games because they only played 60 games the year before, right? And they still made them play 32 spring training games.
Mm-hmm.
So like they don't take everything into account except when they're trying to go to arbitration, and they use all the data, all the analytics. But when it comes to that stuff, they just give you enough, right? They give you what they think you want to know, what you think you need to hear, so they can get whatever they're trying to do. Because it really makes no sense. Like, homers are great, right? I love homers. Let them stay in the game. Let's have a juice ball. Guys are throwing 180. So like, it's fun when you actually square one of them up. Let's just let it be. These guys don't need a softer ball. They don't need a mound to go back. Let's just keep playing. It's been really good for a long time.
And you mentioned Glasnow, a friend of the show, had him on almost a year to the day.
Nice.
Didn't have superstars, but that's the exception.
He's
there.
A superhuman is what
he's
he is.
A superhuman, and he's really good on this kind of thing. Like, I know he does the podcast with Chris Rose.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his forearm, how, once you have a forearm injury, more times than not, your elbow's affected too. So, and he was talking about that, and it was just a tough situation to implement that thing mid-year. And I guess RizzoCast has a bit of a curse going on right now, because Glasnow ended up getting hurt right after that. Jay Jackson.
I'm retired. No, sir.
Yeah, Jay Jackson.
Going to the gym after this. You shouldn't say that. No, sir.
Yeah, the dumbbell's going to fall on your head. No. Yeah, hopefully you're not part of the curse, and hopefully we could avoid that. I do want to ask you, and this is where you'll either really divide people or you won't. The designated hitter is quite the hot topic here. And me, like, in my opinion, I'm fine with either. Like, it really, like, I saw it in 2020 happen in the National League. And is there still plenty of strategy in baseball? Yeah. And I think the double hook thing is out there too, where they have the DH until the starter's out of the game. So that would prohibit any, pinch hitting in like the 5th inning, and a guy's throwing the ball really well, but in the 5th inning you have the bases loaded and you need that chance to score runs. And I think that's not why guys are throwing less innings on the mound, but I think it would help the starter go deep into the game. So what do you think about the DH? Because I know this is a very decisive topic here.
So There's been one rule that I could see that would be a good in between for the time being is once the starter leaves the game, you have to start pinch hitting. But up until then, you can have a DH. I think that kind of plays right, but how do you work that in? It just all really kind of
You're worried about your
has to
scorecard.
play out different ways, but like I would like them to separate the league still somehow.
Yeah.
Like we do have that really cool thing that most leagues don't have, like NFL, same, NBA, same. We have one giant rule that's completely different. And when the American League has come over, they got to figure it out. So it's kind of a neat thing, but I get it both ways, like you said. And every time they say, oh, we want to protect the pitchers, we don't want them to get hurt on the base pass. I'm like, guy's a Major League Baseball player. He runs sprints every day, right?
Be an athlete.
He plays catch every day. And they claim to be the best athlete on the field most of the time, because I'm friends with a lot of pitchers being a catcher. So like these guys love to hit, and when they do get a hit, when they do something big, it's devastating to the other team and it's a morale just crusher. But on the other side, it can build you up in a heartbeat. So I see it both ways. I do think they're going to go to that DH. I think there's, more, I guess, money when you think about guys like Nelson Cruz. Josh Bell's eventually going to be, a guy that's going to be a huge DH. But these big humans that, could go out there and just hit gorilla bombs, I think that's going to play. So at hindsight, I guess, let's just see what happens. But I think we're going to see a DH. I really do. I really, really do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And
I like the strategy the other way though, so much.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was a PO in high school, and it was the greatest time of my life. And I had 3 at bats, didn't even have to worry about hitting. It was fantastic. But that's
you're just trying to go up there and go bombs, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But we always see videos of kid last at bat of senior year, a PO, and he goes yard. It's always a cool story. But that's neither here nor there. So I just had to pop that in, of course. Now I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about dropping bombs.
No, but good. And I think a lot has to do with that. Like when I was in high school, that was just starting, right? Guys were just becoming just pitchers, because baseball was really growing and we had a huge team. So we had some guys that just pitched, but ultimately most of the guys that started, they ended up playing a position or whatever at most schools. But we kind of started a trend that was early 2000s in the Tennessee area. And ever since then, the PO and all those terms have come into play. And I think that those guys go to college, they just pitch, they get into pro ball, they just pitch, they haven't picked up a bat since senior year in high school. And they're like, yeah, I've had 3 at bats in the last 9 years. And Chapman's pitching today. I don't know, so just kind of look at it from a, perspective of guys probably being a little bit terrified going from high school all the way to the big leagues and not hitting really anything but a machine.
Yeah. And if your closer blows the lead in the 9th and then, his spot's due up and, you take the lead and you want him to go back out there for the 10th, he might have to hit. So, right. I mean, obviously nobody's going to do anything in those moments, but I do think it's cool to see the Otanis and the Michael Lorenzens and the Brendan McKays in Tampa Bay come up. And I think it would be interesting to see a little bit more 2-way players, but we'll have to see on that. Yeah, let's dive into Tennessee. You're a Tennessee kid through and through. How did baseball kind of become a passion for you? I know every kid has their story.
Well, I always say I slid out of the womb, ready to go. I was just ready to go. Really high energy guy and just loved being active. And baseball was the sport that just kind of, I guess, took me away. And no matter what, I loved basketball. It was my first love. I'm 5'9". I'm very short deprived. So that wasn't going to work out. And ultimately baseball was the thing that, kept me out of trouble. It kept me, hyper focused. It made me have good grades when I was a kid with 2 learning disabilities. So it kind of opened up the arena for me to be very disciplined and have a, I guess, grit and tenacity to do something really big. So I wanted to play in the big leagues when I was 5 and it never changed all the way through. And then when I retired, I was ready to retire and do something different. So I got to kind of walk through my journey, achieve my dream and leave on my own terms. So it was a kind of very cool script and a lot of bumps in the road, bunch of injuries. things that were really uncontrollable, not that I didn't take care of myself, just God-given genetics said, nope, you can't do that. And tear your knee up a couple times. But I actually look back at those things. I'm actually very happy they happened, because they've made me a better human being. They've made me, stronger in my relationships. They've made me look deeper into life. They've really made me understand baseball at a different level, because I didn't take those times to just sit back. I learned as much as possible and became a fan again. So yeah, baseball captured me, because like at Tennessee, baseball was good, and it's gotten better and better and better. But it was just something that I felt was more than just a getaway for me, until I came into faith. It was probably my faith. It was like, eat, sleep, drink, dirt, get on the field and let's go. So.
And was there a team that you watched in Tennessee? Like, where's the nearest team? What was the team? What was your favorite team growing up?
So we only got the Cubs, Cincinnati, and the Braves.
The Braves.
So obviously it's the Braves, right? You think about my childhood, I had Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, Steve Avery, Ron Gant, Dustin, David Justice, it goes on and on and on. I got to be in camp. My first big league camp was with Javi Lopez. I was literally like gooing and gagging. I was like, hey, Javi, how you doing? You'll play catch today? Can I carry your bag? You need some water? Like, I was such a little kid. And then I had Giles in that same camp, and I just kind of followed him around like a puppy dog, because, I'm 21 years old. I'm at big league camp, and I'm there just to catch bullpens. Literally, that's what they told me. Learn and catch bullpens. And I just learned, caught bullpens, and did anything that they told me to do, because I thought those guys were legends. Mm-hmm. And stuff like that's cool. Like that was a little boy dream of mine. If I got to catch, Smoltz or Maddox or Glavine, I mean, that's the only way I think it could have gotten better at that moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. And is it time for Nashville to get a big league team? Like, yes. Are you on that train? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pump up Nashville for a second.
So, fastest growing metropolitan area in the entire country. It can support a team. Obviously, if you look at the Titans and you look at how the Smashville's doing, mm-hmm. They love their sports. I think there's other cities that can do it, but I think it's time to expand. I think there's too many good players, even those guys that, the quote unquote 4A players, there's too many of them. And you can put together a really good team, and Nashville would actually be a bigger market than a lot of these teams. It's turning into an Atlanta right now. So I live in Murfreesboro. It's southeast of Nashville. We're a metropolitan area now. Like, I'm in a hotel, getting a roof put on our house. It says Marriott, Nashville, Southwest Murfreesboro. So like that's brand new. We became a metropolitan area. So they're trying to make this place huge. And I really do think that it would be, a game changer for the league. I'd be interested to see where they go. Obviously, probably in the AL East or maybe actually my thought would be they would be in the Central, Pittsburgh would be in the East, because then you'd have all the same time zones. So we'll see. It's gonna be cool to see if they could pull that off during this bargaining agreement. I think Durham or Charlotte deserve a team. I'd like to see Orlando get a team at some point. And then you obviously think about maybe Portland or somewhere out west that could handle a team. Vegas is always in the mix, but it's good for the city. I think it's really, really good. So
yeah, Montreal, if they're thinking of
Montreal,
east,
yeah,
that would be a cool one to see baseball back in Montreal. 7th round pick by the Rockies in 2006. And one of the catchphrases, and maybe not catchphrases, but trends on this show is guys come on here and they explain their draft story, or they explain their big league call-up story. So where were you? What were you doing when you got the call that you were drafted by the Rockies? Do you remember?
Yeah, of course you do. I remember. Come on. Yeah, I was in Knoxville. I was at my parents' house, and her family was there, and some of my friends, or my wife, my future wife, her family, some of my family, and a bunch of my friends were there, and we kind of waited around. I was projected a little bit earlier, and about when they drafted a guy in the Sun Belt, another catcher, I kind of got defeated because I was all conference last 2 years. I was all American my junior year, and I'd been promised a lot. And I was a kid that believed just about anything. I believed I could climb my way to the moon if somebody gave me a long enough ladder. And so that hurt. So I walked outside by myself and I went out and just started shooting basketball. Is way I always clear my mind, hitting off the tee, shooting a basketball, or going to run. And I went out there, and sure enough, I'm shooting some free throws, and they run outside, and the Rockies drafted me, and I think it was pick 198. So Scott Corbin called me. I hadn't talked to him in 8 months. It wasn't a team that was on my radar. Kind of blew my mind that they were the team that drafted me, but I got really excited. And he was like, all right, get it done, get signed, and get to Tri-Cities. I was like, yes, I'm staying in Tennessee. He goes, not quite. Tri-Cities, Washington. I was like, what? Like Washington State, like way up there in the corner? Yep, that's where you're going. I was like, all right, let's roll. So that's how it happened. And you know, it's a lot different nowadays. I wish that analytics were there. I wish that, you know, there was more exposure in social media. It makes me feel old saying that, but I think those type of things have really changed the game, and it's given guys like Jose Altuve is a great example, right? Paul Goldschmidt, 13th rounder, and he's continued to grow his game. And those guys would probably not be missed, right? Jose Altuve wouldn't have to beg to get on the field in Venezuela. You know, Paul Goldschmidt probably would have been a first round draft pick, you know, because they'd be like, yeah, all the signs point to this guy's gonna be really, really good. So I think it's really changed, and it's been fun to watch it change. And I think it's good for the guys that, you know, will fight and be gritty. Like we were talking about before we got on the show is, you know, a lot of guys fight their way to get up there, and it's even harder to, you know, stay there. It's easy to get pushed off the mountaintop.
Yeah, of course you remember. Why wouldn't I have thought that you remember? No.
Of course I remember.
Yeah, of course.
Remember your first kiss? Come on.
Do you remember? No, but who was that catcher that was taken before you that you felt defeated? Do you feel comfortable
Honestly,
saying his name?
I was just trying to think of his name, and I can't think of his name, but he was, you know, like he was built like a Greek guy. I remember like he was built different, right? He could run, he could throw, he had all the projectable tools. But like when push came to shove, I kept beating him and beating him, beating him. And I still couldn't get past him at the like MLB view, right? Because it's projectability and blah, blah, blah. And that was tough. You know, I was always told I was too short and too slow. And then I get fast. And then it's, oh, well, you're not flexible enough because you're built like a little bodybuilder. It was just always something. And I would fix the problem to a certain extent, the best I could. Obviously could never do anything with heights. You know, I tried to lie on my baseball card. That didn't work. So, you know, you do whatever you can, but you know, when guys tab you, it makes it really, really hard. And I think that's really changed because of analytics. There's good and bad to it, but with analytics, you can look at it and say, well, I actually see more here. And Tampa Bay is a great example of absolutely leveraging that, not having to spend a ton of money and actually using their money more wise than most teams do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we'll find the name of that catcher. I will put my heart and soul into that after the show. You know I will.
He went to Western Kentucky, and yeah, I'm pretty sure he was probably a good guy, but he was a nemesis when I was in college. So
yeah, who was it? Yeah, pretty sure he was a good guy. We'll stick with that.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing ball. He was a competitor, so he's a good guy.
Yeah. So the catching position, I mean, it has so many intriguing mindsets now. I mean, there's so many ways to look at it. Some catchers prioritize the relationship with working with pitchers. Others focus on their framing. Others focus on working with pitchers. Others focus on just being productive at the plate and dropping bombs. And then the really good ones focus on all of them. What was kind of your focus as a catcher?
So, you know, when I got drafted, I was known for a guy that had good chemistry with his staff. At Middle Tennessee State, from freshman year on, I called my own game. And even then that wasn't normal. So I had an edge there. So I was already calling for seniors and whatnot as a freshman. So I had an ability to understand how to adapt within the game kind of on the fly, because we didn't have that good of pitching, especially my sophomore and junior year. We kind of had guys that had to grind and figure some things out. They may throw sidearm, they may spin around like, you know, Johnny Cueto and do some different things to try to mess up some timing because the stuff wasn't as good as other guys. So that was an advantage going into pro ball that I don't think necessarily they knew until I just got in and started working with pitching staff and pitching coaches and whatnot. And that's still a huge passion of mine. I love catching bullpens and working with guys. But I think offensively, it was probably my thought going in, and, you know, being able to keep the ball in front of me. I had a really, really good arm early on. I threw out a ton of runners in the minor leagues. I think I ended up at 40% or so. So I kind of had a mixed review depending on who you talk to. Guys would say, oh, he's a defensive minded guy. Other guys would say, oh, he's an OPS guy. So it kind of changed depending on the year, the season, and really the opportunity. Like Tampa Bay wanted me my last year to hit and play other positions. You know, other teams wanted me my last year. A team called and they kind of brought up the entire works to get me to just be a part of the staff in the sense of the liaison in between. So I was going to still play, but they wanted to kind of mold me and groom me as my career would move forward. It was a big market team and they wanted me to catch their premium guys. I did that in Tampa and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, but you know, that's kind of where I ended up, right? I ended up as a kind of extension of the coaching staff on the field, being able to work with guys, adapt on the fly and keep the ball in front of me and put together competitive at bat. I wish I would have known all the ins and outs of the analytics and I would have done what I needed to do to my strengths and become maybe better at certain things, but the focus wasn't there. So I didn't know that until it was a little too late.
So as kind of a defense, you know, you mentioned you worked well with the pitching staff. Did that take pressure off you from the offensive side? Because I always hear about catchers who, and not just catchers, this goes for anybody that is, you know, often regarded as a premium defensive player. And I've noticed it, especially up the middle. Does it take some pressure off you offensively?
So my best year was in 2014. I had a really good year. I was a backup catcher. I owned being a backup catcher. So my only thought every day going to the ballpark was be a backup catcher, work with your guys, catch the bullpens, do the extra work. My swing was the last priority because I always spent a ton of time in the cage. I loved it. I had a shirt that said cage dweller on it and I wore it every day because I'm a guy that when I look back at my career, all I miss is the grind. I miss the work in the cage, you know, the breaking of the blisters, the bleeding of the batting gloves. I miss that stuff. But I knew that in that moment, that was my best chance to stick in the big leagues for a long time. So that's what I did. And it was just serving my guys, whoever I could serve, whether it was, you know, a guy that's just coming up or, you know, maybe it's a coordinator that's coming in. I just go talk to him. How are you doing? What's going on? And try to grow as, you know, that backup because I wanted to be the best backup catcher in Major League Baseball. And I believe I got really close that year. I take, you know, pride in that year because it took a lot of, you know, swallowing of my ego not to want to try to be a starter. You know, my entire career was a fight to try to get more games, more at bats when I got to the big leagues, and the door didn't open very often. And when they said it was going to, it shut really fast. So after that injury in 13, I kind of took hold of this is what I'm going to do. And it was all because of how I went about what you were saying, calling the game, blocking the ball, doing what I needed to do to help that guy succeed on that day and make sure he gets all the credit.
Those are some really good Pirates teams, by the way. 2013, 14, there's some really good players on those teams. What was kind of your preparation before, you're in the lineup that day? Let's just say that, you're in the lineup that day, you're catching a guy like, AJ Burnett or something, Francisco Liriano. What is kind of your preparation? Because I know we hear a lot about catchers and pitchers working together in the video room with a pitching coach or going over scouting reports somewhere. What was kind of your pregame routine on a start?
So if the guy was anxious or he was a youngster, I would have to have a different approach comparative to AJ or Liriano. Like AJ Burnett didn't want to sit down and do a scouting report. He had his tendencies, he had his trends that he wanted to go at and attack, right? He was on attack mode the entire time. So he was actually very easy to catch. You just had to manage his emotions, right? Get him fired up when he needs to get fired up, punch tickets when we need to punch tickets, and try to, allow him to throw that nasty sinker and predict, hey, where's the best place to put this right now? Watch his arm action, see where the ball is actually moving. Sometimes guys' balls actually moving differently than they even understand. Charlie Morton was a great example of that. you had to direct his ball. And what I mean by that is some days his fastball would cut, every third or fourth time. So I'd have to kind of have that in the back of my mind so that sinker wouldn't float back over the middle, or that cutter, wouldn't run away at a certain time. So I would have to maybe set it up, maybe have him over adjust. I wouldn't tell him. I just move differently. So that was the first thing, is I have to understand these guys from a physical standpoint. And then most importantly, I'd call the game to their personality. And I don't know a lot of people that ever talk like that, but instead of going with a philosophy or just a scouting report, I'd spend my time. I'd understand that. Like, for example, I always say Adrian Gonzalez never hit a 2-0 breaking ball ever. Last I checked. Like, obviously he's not playing Mexico. He would take it almost every time. So if I was in a pickle, that's something I knew I could throw, and he was not going to swing at it, even if the guy's breaking ball stunk, and it worked every single time. So like those little things that you see, you trend, like, okay, I'll keep that in the back of my head just in case I need it. And then after that, it's what the guy has that day. How's he doing that day? And what does he need? Because I'm just going to serve him and try to help, squeeze that juice out of him like an orange the best I can that day. But ultimately, when he picks up the ball, it's his conviction that is going to be win or lose. So I want to make sure he's convicted in everything he does. Like, a lot of times I go out, if they're shaking me off, I'm like, hey, what do you want to do? They say what they want to do. I say, all right, be convicted and miss down, like lower than low. Like, and as we went further on, I would make a scouting report with that 9 boxes, and I would circle where their strengths are. And then I would circle on every single guy, and I just lay it there, like where they should throw their pitch. Like, hey, on this guy, he doesn't hit. He's a dead red fastball guy. Your changeup, I know you love it. It's really your third best pitch, but you're going to want to throw it. You can throw it for a strike here. On these other guys, absolutely not. So you kind of just play the guy. Like Glasnow is a great example. I would say, Glasnow, you're superhuman. Okay. I'm going to get you a cape, and they're going to play super music as you're walking to the mound, and no one should hit you today because you throw lightning bolts. And I would just feed him, confidence, because I watched him in Pittsburgh and I faced him, and I was like, this guy should never get hit. Like, he's really different. Like, he's releasing the ball, and I feel like he's picking my nose right after it. It's just not right.
That's
So
church.
you got to play it out that way.
Yeah, that's church right there. For all you young catchers, that right there is church. One thing I want to ask you is, we've seen the new trend for catchers that focuses on them trying to get that low strike by setting up kind of on one knee. And I first realized that it was kind of infiltrating the game when I saw Buster Posey start doing it here in San Francisco. And when I saw him adapting to it, I said, wow, this must be something that is pretty effective. But there's a downside to it. We've seen some, there is a downside to most things in baseball that you try to change. Do you like that strategy, or would you like to see the more conventional catching back in the game? Because I know that there's a lot of old school pitchers that I've heard kind of criticizing the amount of flexibility that the one knee gives you.
So that's what I would say is I would, if I teach a kid how to catch, I challenge them to change their position consistently. Mm-hmm. So throw with one knee down, throw with the other knee down, have a narrow stance, have a wide stance. And it's really about the mobility of the guy. Like, if you look at Jacob Stallings with the Pirates, he's hypermobile. He's 6'5" and he's hypermobile. So movement isn't a problem in a short area. I called him the cheetah because he could move really fast in a 6-foot area. I felt like Buster Posey could catch on one knee his entire career because his hands were so good. He picked most of the time. He didn't block most of the time, right? Molina, same thing. His hands are so good, and he's so good at having that predictable move to get to the ball when he needs to block. But not everybody are those guys. And the thing is you're seeing more guys like Mitch, is it Garver with
Twins?
Yes. He's a guy that looks like he play shortstop. Real Muto, guy that looks like he plays shortstop. Grandal looks like he could, run out and go in the middle of the diamond. Like, a lot of these guys look like they're middle infielders first, and now they went behind the plate. You don't see many Sal Ferzanos anymore. The big bulky guy that's back there and nothing gets by him. He's got a bazooka. You're seeing guys that are super athletic. Not that Sal couldn't be a shortstop. I love Sal. He could be whatever he wants because he could eat me alive. So I don't want to make him mad. So I think it's a cool trend. I don't think necessarily that I love or hate it. I really love it for certain guys. And I'll tell you a truth is most of the time, if you go and you have a 16-year-old throw to second base, have them throw once where they're in that normal stance, secondary stance, then the next one, have them throw from a knee. I bet the one from the knee's faster. And the reason being is they actually stay close to the ground. And it's actually made a lot of the big league guys better blockers because they're not high and they don't get caught in between. And they have to have a little bit of readiness going that direction if it's coming with a slider or whatever have you. And they're having to be more athletic. They're training their bodies a lot differently. So that mobility for these older guys and these younger guys, if they do it at least in practice and try it and make themselves a little vulnerable, I think it benefits them, even if they don't do it necessarily in the games. I had a lot of kids I worked with last year that we did it the entire time. I'm like, how'd it go? They're like, well, when you got on second base, I just couldn't do it. I'm like, cool. It doesn't matter. When the confidence comes, great. And to be honest, like the mobility is still a little bit janky. So, you want to make sure you feel comfortable. And there's certain guys, as you know, you're watching a game and the guy's all over the place. And that's when you just say, I'm going to be wide. I'm going to have a lot of movement. I'm just going to help this guy figure it out and give him this huge barn door to throw at. And that's where you don't want to necessarily get small. You want to say, hey, just get it here. I'm going to try to funnel it in. And I think you just have to continually look at what the game's telling you, what the pitcher's telling you, and really what your body's telling you. If you're down on one knee and your receiving sucks, I don't think it's necessarily that you need to be down on one knee or anything else and not getting the low pitch. So you just kind of got to play it out, be real with yourself, but understand what are you feeling while you're doing it too.
Yeah, I want to talk real quick about Jacob Stallings, because the cheetah, as you referred to him as, and he's recently been traded to the Marlins, but getting to watch him every day, and he's a platinum, glove winner. He's a Gold Glove Award winner now. How cool has it been to watch him play defense? Because he's not a household name nationally. Yeah,
and too, like he doesn't do anything spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
He just does it well every day. Like I have a thing right now that I think the predictable players being overlooked in Major League Baseball. So what I mean by that is like Jacob Stallings, right? The guy's going to hit 230, 245 on a great year. He may hit 250 and have an OPS over 800 on a great year if everything lines up. But he's going to produce some RBIs. He's going to get some big hits. That's predictable. He's been that way even when he was, a floater between AAA and the big leagues. And you knew he could call a game. He cared about his staff. Catching came first, and he was a good clubhouse guy. So all those things are predictable. And I think that gave him the opportunity to grow behind the plate because he was so good at getting the little things done, receiving the ball, working with umpires, working with the staff, and being a guy that, everyone seemed to like and everybody wanted to throw to, that he was able to, hey, I'm going to try some things different. I'm going to really work on my receiving. This year it was the blocking that really put him over the mark, being able to keep guys from moving up bases because he didn't throw as well and he didn't actually receive as well as he did the year before, but he blocked tremendous, like as good as I could have ever imagined someone block in the major leagues. And his run preventions were just unreal. So at the end of the day, he understood who he was, what his capabilities were, and then he saw areas where he could improve, and he just absolutely smothered them with work.
How far is Pittsburgh away from competing in the National League Central? Loaded question.
It is a loaded. Let's wait till the CBA is done, because if they do a floor, it could happen real fast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because if I said it to somebody the other day, like Pittsburgh's never going to compete. I was like, if they have a floor of $100 million next year, that's $70 million almost. These guys got to figure out how to spend. Like they could go get anybody, right? And then complement them with all these young pieces. And these 1-year deals are going to help the Pirates. Like these things that are happening with Max Scherzer and Trevor Bauer at $40 million, that stuff's going to end up helping the Pirates because the Pirates could sign a guy to a 1-year, $20 million contract and not be locked in and not kill him. That's what Tampa Bay's doing, right? 1 to 2 year deals with guys like Charlie Morton. They went out and got Michael Wacha for $8 million. And that's going to help those teams. And if they do a floor, I mean, watch out. You never know, because They got Key Bryant at third. He's a Gold Glove caliber. They got Perez now, who I think is honestly, if he's healthy, he's a better player than Jacob Stallings. So you got Perez behind the plate. You have Brian Reynolds in center. You have a superstar in the making in O'Neal Cruz, who still kind of out there if he's going to be a shortstop, right fielder. But you have a lot of good pieces, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of how, they kind of put it all together and what comes out of it. But they're going to have a huge, huge uptick in their development in the pitching side. Some of these guys that struggled last year, their numbers are going to trend way down coming into next year. So they're going to be better automatically on the mound.
And the good thing about those 1-year deals that you were talking about is that, if all doesn't work out, you could just make them available at the deadline and flip them.
Correct. And that's what they've been doing. Just like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Yeah.
Yeah. And
they've been like Lay's potato chips. You can't just have one. They just throwing them around. It's crazy. It's fun to watch because it's so different. Like the Pittsburgh community gets wrapped up in, they want to see their guys stay. And the way that, Ben Sherrington's come in and just kind of cleaned house, but there's a chance. And I would say a very strong chance we're number one when it comes to best organization talent now, especially after Stallings. I mean, that Stallings trade netted us a guy that's going to walk into our rotation and be a 1 or a 2 for us immediately. So we lost Jacob Stallings. I'm going to miss him. I really like watching him play, but we got a 6'7" youngster who's already had success in the big leagues, with the under a 4 ERA. We didn't have a guy like that. Now we do. Right. And then we got Perez. It's just, he's doing some really cool things. And who he drafted, the draft this year, if you haven't looked at that, he got 4 first rounders. They were all projected to be first rounders. He got them all. And that just doesn't happen. So I'm excited about where the future is going to go.
Wonder if one of them was a catcher from Kentucky who.
Yes, actually. First pick overall.
No way.
Yes. Yep.
That's right.
Went to Louisville.
That's right.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I said that as a joke from, I said, that's crazy. That's hilarious.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
That's wild. No, that's great. Yeah, no. My mind is blown.
Yeah. If you have a chance, you should grab a hold of that kid. He's a different breed. He was in the booth with us one day, and I didn't know if he was ready to go to buds or if he was ready to take over the world, or he just had a mentality of I'm going to go get it. I'm not satisfied. I want to accept the role of being a leader now. And I was like, man, this guy is ready
Henry
to go.
Davis.
Yeah. Cool story about him. He actually went to Pirate City. So anybody that's listening, Pirate City is kind of like a hotel for the youngsters at the spring training site. It's kind of what it looks like, a dormitory of sorts. And he asked the farm director, hey, can I stay with a young Latin player so I can, help him out, introduce him to the culture and, learn some of the language and blah, blah. His best friend got drafted by the Pirates and his roommate at Louisville for 3 years. And he chose to live away. It's just,
that's incredible.
I like this kid. I really like this kid. That's not normal. And that's the culture they're trying to build.
Okay, I'll try this again. The only catcher from Kentucky that you like. There we go. There we go.
Sure. Yes.
That works a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, that's a broad statement, but for now, that's the only one I know.
Yeah.
All right.
And I will find the name of that catcher that that you were a little upset that went ahead of you in the draft. Wrapping up here, you got your feet in broadcasting here in the TV world, and doing some Pirates games, doing some analysis. Tell me about the experience. How has it been so far?
It's been interesting. I really kind of dove in because it's not something I ever thought I'd be able to do, let alone given the opportunity to do. And what I mean by that is, as a kid, I had 2 learning disabilities that made me terrified to read in front of people, to talk in front of people. And, luckily I married someone and I had a teacher that, helped me figure out some things in a different way. And my wife is organization communications major, really good at brand marketing and whatnot. And she just kind of changed my world. She pushed me into these situations I didn't want to do. I'd sweat and I'd be nervous, and the emotion that would come out of it would just be miserable, but I just kept doing it. And I did it more and more and more. It created a great opportunity, and it's been really neat. I've gotten into video editing. I've gotten into audio. I really should probably do more and put more stuff out, but I end up doing it, as help for guys that want to enhance their career and do some things. So it's been fun. I've really enjoyed learning the production, the truck, how they have that all set up and all the things that go in a game. And honestly, probably my favorite part is all the mess ups, because we're live, right? The monitor goes out and we're doing highlights. I'm stoked because you have to listen to your producer tell you what's on the screen and you're coming up with, what you're saying, and you have nothing. Those things are thrilling and fun, but the main reason why I'm in it is because I was a kid that wasn't fortunate enough to maybe have a lesson or be able to work with somebody that costs money, right? We didn't have, enough money to go every week. So I went once a month. I did as much as I could, and it's so expensive. So one of my favorite things to do is anytime I get to teach, and I try to do it in a two-way like context. Since I'm in Pittsburgh, is I have the old faithful that don't want to hear anything about like analytics. They don't want to hear about this guy could be good. They just care about his batting average and they care about winning. That's it. That's all they care about. That's great. So I get to teach those guys, and they've opened up their mind a lot to, hey, there's some new age to this, but the new age isn't different than the old age. We just can quantify it differently. It's a lot quicker. We can find out if guys are good really fast. Like you would have gotten guys to the big leagues faster, years ago if we had this capability. And then the youngsters, I think about them. There's so much information, it's overwhelming. So how can you make it simple for them? How can they get some tip or some opportunity learning from, maybe it's a story of a guy kind of working through adversity, or maybe it's just one drill or something that, could fix Brian Reynolds when he's struggling. I just make sure to kind of put that out there, and hopefully some kid, takes it, puts it in his pocket, and it helps him. And so that's why I really love doing it. And, it's a platform to share, the good. There's a lot of bad in the world. It's a platform to get away and share some good. So I've enjoyed it. I'm interested to see where it's going to go. There's a lot of moving pieces at AT&T right now. We just merged with Discovery. So there's going to be a lot of changes. We're doing streaming and a bunch of different stuff. So I'm actually going to be doing a lot of things I've never done before. So I'm pretty stoked about it.
Yeah. Hopefully we get to see, like maybe Greg Brown's in the bathroom in the middle of an inning, and then someone hits a leadoff homer and you get to call play-by-play on the homer. Is that in the future?
Yes. Just once.
Just once.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I've been trying to joke around with, I want to do some fun segments. And I thought about, you watch those ESPN shows where they go back and forth and they're arguing. I think about Stephen Rose in basketball. I thought it'd be hilarious if I did Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with myself. So I'm literally arguing with myself, and because there's been a couple of times where, something happens with someone's family or whatnot, and they're running late. And I've almost had to be in the game. Here you go. It's all you're running the whole show. And I always said, if that ever happens, if it really happens, I'm going to have a hat on one side and I'm going to keep changing. And I thought it'd be fun. Wouldn't that be priceless? If Greg Brown did that, I think he'd be world renowned. He's got such a big personality, and it'd be fun for fans to see it, because they just see the fun personality, but they don't get to see the actual Greg Brown. They just know him as that voice. They'd actually get to see him in a little bit different way. It'd be really funny. So
yeah, can't wait for sure. Michael, I appreciate the time. This was a lot of fun, or should I say, Fort, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate the time, and you guys could follow him on Twitter at the Fort McKenry, and then of course you could follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast. Yeah, no, man, I appreciate you coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun, and I wish you luck in all you do. Keep in touch, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. So go ahead, subscribe to all the channels, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast once again. And yeah, we'll see you next time.